Okay, look, are we alone now? Can we have a face-to-face for a moment? I know you can't see me, but let's just be honest with each other. The Elder Scrolls Online is a big game. It has a lot of NPCs, and a lot of inconsequential NPCs at that. When errors happen like those that I'll be showing you today, it's not because they try to hide some hidden backstory, it's because they made a small error and it's too minor to fix. Because of that, a lot of these NPCs are very minor as well, and them being of the wrong race doesn't hamper your gameplay experience in the slightest. Shit, if people didn't record this stuff meticulously online, I wouldn't even know about this. Alas, word has reached me, and being the asshole that I am, it's up to me to take a look at these insignificant NPCs in order to... Well, I guess I hope that someone with some kind of influence comes across this and maybe rights these wrongs, just to put our collective minds at ease. And there's something I should have specified a while ago, but this just always seemed apparent to me. Apparently that's not the case for everyone though, so it's time I address this. When I talk about character names, a lot of people comment, "Oh, but in real life," followed by a very colorful explanation. You see, the problem with that is that this isn't real life. In media like books, graphic novels and video games, there is usually one of two naming schemes at play. One is a realistic naming scheme that's more akin to real life. Duplicate names are more commonplace, just like they are in the real world. And this may result in your world feeling more, well, realistic. The second naming scheme is the individualistic naming scheme. This one makes sure to have almost every NPC have a unique name. This way you will remember their characters more, and you basically can have a bond with any of them. And, say it with me now, Bethesda games use the second naming scheme. Although they are willing to double dip sometimes, they usually make sure to have at least a different surname though. Usually. That being said, I don't really know how to present these cases in an interesting way, as I've struggled a bit with that in the past. So here's a quiz. You'll get 3 names on the board, and I just want you to tell me which race these characters are. Are you gonna use logic? Or maybe use the opposite tactic? Let's find out. The names on the board are Annick Longton, Irisa Dubois, and Gail Bronk. So, what's your first impression? Any particular details stick out? Anything at all? Take your time. Alright, time for the final answers. And... okay. First thing I gotta get out of the way, if you thought Breton as an answer, then they got you good. None of these people are Bretons, despite the fact that they should be. So let's take a closer look, eh? Annick Longton is a Redguard, despite her having a Breton husband and a Breton daughter. That's not how that works. But if you got this one right, the rest will be a cakewalk. Irisa Dubois is actually an orc. Yes, I'm serious. Do I really need to specify anything for this overtly Breton name? I mean, there are literally 3 different Bretons in the same game with this last name. And finally, Gail Bronk, our first man here. He is a wood elf. And yes, once again, there are already 3 Bretons in the game with the same last name, it itself being a carryover from Oblivion's Antoine Bronk, who of course was Breton as well. I think I've made my point, right? You've heard 3 Breton names, all tied to completely different races. You don't really know what to expect, and that's kind of a theme here today. When reading through a list of characters, it might not even appear that odd to you at first, but once you hone in on the weirdness, it never escapes you. Speaking of honing in, I want to do that for my next point here. Elder Scrolls Online often reuses first and last names from previous games. Like, really often. Which, in itself, isn't a problem of course. Like I mentioned in the previous video, the Motier family gets special treatment in this manner, if we just use them as an example. But I'm not really a fan when the game just lifts random names as if it were just a random selector AI. For example, there are a lot of weird characters in Morrowind that practically have an inside joke or Easter egg as name. And when these just get reused, it feels dirty. But don't worry. I'm not gonna go on an entire tangent about that here. The weird Morrowind guys will almost certainly get their own video because it's such an interesting topic to me. Just be warned, guys like Dridden Led, Sebastian Brutia, and everyone of the Cran family, I have my eye on you. Okay, wait a minute. I've just found something completely ridiculous whilst writing this script. I know this is a bit of a character break, but hey, fuck it. So, without going too in-depth about the Morrowind video, there's this Bosmer woman named Hina Dornkay that can be found in the game. Her name doesn't line up with anything in the naming convention, and she would basically be the only Bosmer with the last name in all the last 3 mainline Elder Scrolls titles. So, the place where she's located is filled with all these other NPCs that have these weird, uncharacteristic names, which is also where Sebastian Brucha gets his from. So, you may think that that's nothing to worry about, everything's restricted to Morrowind, right? Wrong. So while I was searching for duplicates online, I found one. In a podcast episode, the official Elder Scrolls Online lore master mentioned a character he made up named Hundelin Dornkay. Yes, Hundelin fucking Dornkay. If you don't know how stupid that is, well, we just took the Bosmer first name Hundelin from Oblivion and slapped Dornkay to it. Like, why? That doesn't make any sense. It's just like this one-off Easter egg-ish name from Morrowind that you just, without thinking, added to another NPC. Like, that doesn't make sense. Why do that? I shouldn't even care this much about it, but I'm a Firefly attracted to this kind of random shit. I'm just so puzzled by this. Like, why do this? Why? Okay, let's try and resume, I guess. Anyone up for another guessing round? Here are 4 more names. Indarin Druil, Ralt Marvos, Niden Ramotron, and Marie Salandas. I mean, you can already guess where this is going, right? Although it's a bit different than what you might expect, if I'm honest. Analyzed everything? Good. So, everyone who said these are Dunmer names gets an imaginary victory. Yes, these are all Dunmer names, but none of the NPCs are Dunmer. Instead, they're all Bosmer, for some reason. Do I even need to say anything? Indarin Druil has a first name lifted from Skyrim, and a Dunmer with the same last name appears in both Online and Morrowind. The same exact thing can be said about Ralt Marvos, and their first name also appears in Morrowind. Again, the exact same thing for Niden Ramotron, first name from Morrowind, last name also makes multiple appearances, and Marie Salandas has a first name from Skyrim and the last name that first appeared in Morrowind's Tribunal DLC. All of them, of course, are tied to Dunmer. Whatever. Speed round, I suppose. Aaron Maris. He's a Nord, but he has a Dunmer name. The first name comes from Oblivion's Aaron Veretti, while the last name appears numerous times throughout both Morrowind and Online. The town he is found in is also primarily inhabited by Dunmer, no surprise there. On the opposite side of the spectrum, Knutvar, a generic Dunmer with a Nord name. Clillian Berry. She's a Redguard but has a Breton name. No derivatives here, but there are at least 5 other Bretons in Online with the surname. Isaramal Catmain, again a female Redguard with a Breton name, although their first name might also be Redguard, I suppose. Whatever the case, she randomly has a Breton surname that she shares with 3 other Bretons in game. The exact same thing with Yada Connolly, randomly seems to have a Breton surname. He's just a random male Redguard though. Multiple Bretons in Online have the Connolly surname. Elusa Dare, again! And she appears to not have had the surname initially, it was added later. What the fuck? Hecilium Epinard. Okay, so now we've got a male Redguard with an Imperial sounding first name and a common Breton last name. What the fuck? Ladia Florel. Well, she's unique. No derivatives at all. No one in this game, or any previous one, shares a first or last name. That doesn't explain why she's a female Redguard with a Breton last name though. Fabrel Giardelli. She shares a first name with 2 Breton women, but her last name is more Imperial, and she shares that with no one. Still Redguard though. Ursivira Laverne. Look, I'm not even certain if this one is a mistake. She apparently shares a house with a Breton husband, so it's likely she got her surname from him. When this happens, I don't count them as mistakes simply because they aren't. I just wanted to show you this weird Dunmerish sounding mess of a first name. I'm sorry if you watch this and your name is Ursivira. Only my best of wishes to you. Lantoine Renault. Yeah, you've heard it by now. He has a common Breton surname, and even funnier is that the female version of his name, Lantoinette, also appears in game, as a Breton of course. Avis Aralet. Oh boy, something new again. Avis is an original first name, but the surname Aralet appears in Morrowind, the Shivering Isles DLC, and Online. All of these instances connected to Dunmer, while Avis here is an Altmer. Guillaume Logan. Wow, It's almost been a full 3 sentences before I had to speak French again. Yeah, Breton name, first name is used multiple times, yada yada yada. Raphael Ledur. He, high elf, Breton he should be. Next. I mean, for all the people we've seen that have a Breton name but aren't that, the Bretons themselves don't have any real fuck-ups of this caliber. I'm not tackling you right now, Sebastian. We do have Nononemwan, which is finally a Breton with an overtly Bosmer name. Nice to have some variety. Alveno Apo. A combination of Morrowind's Alveno Andules and Vitolia Apo. The problem here is that Vitolia Apo in Morrowind is a dark elf mistakenly given an imperial name. Similar mismatch as to what we've been talking about here. And now someone took that wrong name and created a new wrong NPC with it. You see why this stuff is important to me? You get shit like this. Evin Lelip. Oh my god, no way. It's a dark elf, but she mistakenly has a Breton name. Who could have expected that? Bera Moorsmith. That's like a whole ass Nord name. What the fuck? Excuse my language, but yeah. Oh, and I should also mention here, because these Dunmer are so numerous, I once again don't know misgendered names, or we'd be here all day. Also, while some of these aren't necessarily wrong race names, they just don't fit Dunmer. Thinking of Sidura Jaxilsu, Daria Herodon, and Curate Scalis in particular. And yes, I know that Curate isn't a first name, but Scalis is more Redguard than anything. Archivist Ernarde. Just guess. Besides Irisa, some orcs are also just kinda weirdly named. Lagrog Guilon, Breton surname for some reason. Bulak Idolus, Imperial surname for some reason. And then Zumog Foom, which doesn't really sound like anything at all. I also want to address that I'm no supreme name choosing robot by any stretch of the imagination, so it's quite possible I might have missed one oddity or the other. Maybe they even plan on introducing some more in another update. I can't tell. But now it's time for my favorite part. The reason why I made this video in the first place. When I discovered this for the first time, I felt like Wall-E, just surrounded by a world of utter garbage. So, there's this Argonian named Deca Desno. You might notice that's also a name that doesn't fit in with any of the established conventions. But in this case, that's fine. Deca is just an Easter egg. The name comes from a player related to a real life event. It feels just like a lot of the weird Morrowind outliers. My point being that I haven't mentioned her up to now because I know you as a viewer are intelligent enough to not mix up this obvious outlier with the conventional names. Wanna know who isn't that intelligent though? You can guess where this is going, but I'm not really gonna call any developer stupid. That's too harsh. But if the next couple examples aren't the result of a random name generator, then someone out there has severely disappointed me. Okay, so remember Divide Fear? Pretty popular character overall. In his original appearance in Morrowind, his daughters also debuted. Of course, these were actually just clones. Clones that didn't really have a name, more so a number. Their names all correspond to a letter of the Greek alphabet. Alpha, Alpha, first letter. Beta, Beta, second letter. Delta, Delta, fourth letter. Upse, Epsilon, which is either the fifth letter, or Upsilon, which is the fifth to last letter. If you just browse names on the UESP, there's even a note that states that these aren't proper names, but rather alphabetical identifications. Anyone wanna pass that note on to the online devs? Yes, of course we have female Dunmer in online with these exact names, although now completely robbed of context, which is, like I stated originally, hopefully the work of some random name generating AI, because otherwise I'm gonna be quite upset that someone didn't just check this. Shit, if you're familiar with Morrowind, you shouldn't even check this, you would probably already know it. So we have one alpha clone in the form of Alpha Laris, two goddamn beta clones in the form of Beta Malrom and Beta Damori, one delta clone in the form of Delta Netri, and luckily no Upse clone, because a name like Upse, now that's where we draw the line apparently. Ursevera. And I guess that after that atrocity, it's best to end it. I can only presume that not everyone wants to hear someone rant about this as much as I do. But if there's any takeaway from this, it's to double check your characters after making them, and maybe not putting as much trust in a name generator. If you like the rant, please let me know. Do the same thing if I've missed someone obvious, or if you have something even more ridiculous to share. See you soon.